our program is Professor Brando Okolo, who will give us a keynote speech. And I am highly honored to introduce him and welcome him. So Professor Brando Okolo is currently a director at Standby's Institute for Materials Applications and 3D Printing Solutions in Karlsruhe. He is an engineer who obtained his PhD in 2003 with a distinction in physical metallurgy, material science, and engineering from the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Science Systems and the University of Stuttgart in Germany. He went ahead to become a professor of material science and engineering from the University of Stuttgart and the German University in Cairo, Egypt. And by so doing, he became the first African to become an engineer professor in Germany. So Professor Brando Okolo is a pace setter. We are deeply honored to have you here, sir. Over the past 6 years, he has engaged in he has founded several technology startup companies. He has over 100 publications covering the field of science and engineering technologies, as well as topics that relate to African development. He has pioneered work in 3D printing, where he holds several patents, and he sits on the board of several EU committees. I am deeply honored to welcome you, sir, and we are ready to have you. Please let's welcome him with prayers in the chat section.
Very much for that very kind introduction. Thank you. Without further ado, I'd like to, if you can give me access to my presentation. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, about 3 months ago, Dr. Taiwo approached me and said, I'd like you to give a talk on capacity building for sustainable. Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. To give a talk on building capacity for sustainable growth. And of course, when you hear the word sustainable growth these days, what comes to mind is the environment. And also businesses talk about sustainable growth. And of course, we see sustainable growth happen in the lives of professionals, of students, in the lives of kids, in the lives of people in homes. So there can be sustainable growth occurring from all kinds of, or all aspects of life. But for today's presentation, I'll be focusing on the human growth, really, especially with focus on us as members of the academia in Europe. So for my presentation today, I have these outline. First, I would like us to talk about what needs to grow. Yeah, not everything in our lives deserves to grow. You would imagine there are things that need to be suppressed. There are things that need to be nurtured, given the environment and the exposure to grow beyond where they are. And the other point would be, why should growth be sustained? Why is it necessary to grow beyond a certain point? And we'll talk about a few barriers against growth and how to guarantee growth. And I'll just in a few words say a few things about how growth and what has driven growth for me as an individual. So as I already mentioned, in terms of sustainability and growth, this can happen in three critical ways today. Either you as a person, growth in your personality, growth in your assets, in your net worth, in your network, in the communities that you belong. And as a business, we also see growth and the ability to sustain growth occurring. And that growth, of course, at the very core of growth in a business is revenue, growing your brand, your client base, your organizational strength, your market reach, visibility in your market space, and growing your team beyond where it was a couple of years ago. Yeah. So these are all aspects of growth within a business. And as you already know, there's a lot of talk about zero emissions, climate protection, environmental protection, saving our planet. These are all really very noble causes that we pursue as humanity. And that growth could be, trying to preserve our biodiversity, trying to modify our industrial processes, our industrial habits in such a way that we can create clean air, clean water, unpolluted soil, drive waste reduction, handle overshoot policies, life cycle policies, drive circular economy, minimize our carbon footprint and industrial impact. So these are all areas where both sustainability and growth intersect with themselves in our human endeavor. And for the purpose of today's presentation, I'll be focusing on the growth of the individual, especially you as an academic or somebody in the academia out here in the diaspora. So what needs to grow in terms of our personality? Our professional skill sets need to grow as professionals, as individuals. We should never take this for granted. And the reason why your professional skill sets need to grow is because this is what really establishes the bridge between you and your future as a professional, as a career-driven person. Your professional skill sets really has to grow. And your abilities as well, your talents. We all as human beings, we have all kinds of talents that have been put into us by nature. And you need to be able to identify those talents, nurture those talents, and bring yourself into environments where those talents would help you create the identity that you so much seek to have. We can also grow our processes as individuals as well. Yeah, and these processes come in all kinds of forms. They could be habits, they could be routines, they could be methods which helps improve our lives as human beings. And of course, net worth. I've heard already some of the phrases being given by attributed to Dr. Taiwo, where that your network is your network. And in this presentation, I've tried to draw a distinction actually between net worth and network. So for me, net worth is not just your the difference between your liability and your assets. It involves all kinds of things. It involves your values as well. It involves your ideals. It involves your pedigree. These all define your net worth, really. And of course, your network. For convenience, I've split network across your professional network and the social network. At some point, these two converge, and your ability to take full advantage of your network, no matter how minimal that network might be, you must be able to take full advantage of it and grow it, or allow it grow you as an individual as well. Okay. So in terms of professional skills, I already said these skills come in two forms. We have the soft skills. These are interpersonal or so-called people skills. And as I mentioned, your skill set is what establishes the bridge between you and your future, especially your future as a career-driven person. And some of these skills involves your ability to communicate effectively without ambiguities. And, this reminds me of a physicist called Richard Feynman. His cardinal belief, even as a quantum physicist, is that if you cannot describe any theory, any idea, any concept in such a way that the child should be able to understand it, then you're a bad communicator. So in terms of communication, the goal is not to appear too intellectual. The goal is not to appear sophisticated. The goal is to, with all clarity, pass across a certain message. This should be the goal in communication. And as you communicate, there are all kinds of preparations that goes around communication. Those preparations should embody who you are, your ability to also listen. It's not just, speaking, your ability to, listen either actively or passively is also what defines your skill set. So these are things that one has to be able to nurture. Again, I'm reminded of, there used to be a literary genius here in Germany called Marcel Reich-Ranitzky. In fact, he was described at some point as the literary pope of Germany. He originally came from Warsaw, and he ran for years a TV dialogue program. And one of the things I realized was that he invites people over to speak in this show, but he dominates the conversation. He wouldn't even let the guests say much. These are, what should I say? This is his way, but in terms of soft skills, you must be a good listener. Very important. Your ability to, hear even what people are saying, reading between the lines, and try to glean out all kinds of messages out of what people say is very important. And the ability to show attention to details as well. So these are parts of soft skills that you should be able to nurture and grow in a very effective way. And critical thinking. So critical thinking also involves not immediately jumping to conclusions. You need to be able to look at the two sides of an argument, okay? You need to be able to work with as much facts as possible. You need to be able to also reach into your personal experiences. You need to be able to reach into your personal experiences and come up with a value-driven opinion on certain topics. And you need to show empathy. Empathy is it's important. These days we talk about emotional intelligence and all kinds of other quotients that we use to describe one's level of advancement. Empathy is a critical aspect of growth, is a critical aspect of success as well. And of course, the ability to resolve conflicts. This is important because we're all human beings. We come to our workplaces with our flaws, with our defects, and with our values. And there will be clashes, there will be conflict, there will be misunderstandings. Your ability to be able to identify those opportunities to get into conflict and manage those opportunities in a very coordinated and a mature manner is important in your growth as an individual. And I also talked about hard skills. So hard skills, as we know, are quantifiable. They're teachable skills. Examples are becoming a carpenter, for instance. It's not something that you wake up one day and you're suddenly a carpenter. It's something that you either watch a carpenter work and learn from a carpenter, or you're taken to a carpentry school and you learn the skills, the techniques, the methods, the approaches, the rules, the compliances that go around being a carpenter. And this is important. These are skills that we definitely need to be able to acquire and build those skills into our personality. Examples also are computer programming, for instance. So these are hard skills that you can learn. To be an accountant, have an eye for numbers. By simply looking at numbers, you can immediately interpret those numbers in the most factual way. Being a farmer as well, these are hard skills. Being able to get involved in project management and all kinds of other disciplines that we find today in our labor environment, we should be able to harness, we should be able to encourage, we should be able to promote, and we should be able to grow hard skills as individuals. These days we find, you know, or we've heard, I'm sure most of you must have heard this, that a lot of our universities, not just in Africa, but we see that as well out here in Europe. We see people who come out of the university and they come out, you know, fully theoretical in their preparations for the labor force, with sometimes absolutely no practical skills, and this is a problem. And to be able to overcome that problem, it's important that already at the stage where you are in school and, you know, getting all that theory and very minimal practical experience, it's important that you expose yourself to as much practical experiences as possible. And these can be done through either becoming a HEVI, you know, taking up an internship, going to, you know, do vocational work, going to attend seminars and workshops where new skills can be brought into your personal portfolio. And then abilities and talents, yeah. So these, you can see there's a distinction really between skills and abilities. So abilities are your talents basically, and these oftentimes come natural, or sometimes they could be acquired, but oftentimes it comes natural. We have people who by nature, they have very, very, you know, they wear very comforting atmosphere around them. They're able to inspire others. They're able to comfort people. By nature, they're able to intervene. They're able to resolve conflicts. They're able to do certain things with very, very little effort because it comes natural for them. And we also see example like storytelling, for instance. We have kids that have spent time either, you know, growing up with their grandparents or with their great-grandparents, and they suddenly grow up being wonderful storytellers, or they grow up being showing wisdom that are beyond their numerical ages. Yeah, so these are things that we also as adults, you need to be able to sit down and you know, do this self-assessment. What is my skill? What is my talent? You know, what is it that distinguishes me from not just my peers, but also within my family, within the nucleus family? What makes me special as a human being? What is it that when I bring this into an environment, when I bring this into a community, people feel attracted to it? You need to identify this. Other examples of you know, naturally acquired abilities or talents, ability to speak, to make a speech, to counsel people, and have instincts, or what some people would call a gut feeling for certain things. These attributes are important. They are important for personal growth. You must not have all of them, but you need to be able to have a sufficient amount of them that would propel you beyond your current position. I talked about processes, you know, that we also need to be able to grow certain processes that take place in our life, you know, especially your sense of organization. There are people who are very, very methodical in everything. You give them a problem to solve, they already have a template somewhere in their mind, and they start executing that template line by line. And once they get stuck somewhere, they know what to do to untangle their thought process and try to come up with solutions for certain problems. Sometimes it is good to have processes that help you confront certain issues. It's important. And those processes might come you know, without you thinking too much about it. It just comes. Some of them requires that you refer to a book. Some of them requires that, you know, you sit down and reflect. Some of them requires that you have a conversation with a mentor to be able to resolve a certain situation. So our ability to nurture certain processes in our day-to-day lives are very important. Other examples are, you know, having a set of ecological actions, ethics, traditions, loyalty towards commitments. So these are all things that helps define processes that drive us forward as human beings. Okay. I think we have noise in the background. Good. So the next point that I've pointed out here that needs to grow is your net worth. And we already talked about, you know, the distinction between net worth and network. And for me, part of my net worth is my values, my ideals, my pedigree, you know, things that describe, you know, not just, you know, the early years of my life, but also the early years of my career as well. You can actually, you can influence this process. You can influence your pedigree as a career person. And one way you can actually influence that is now, as you're preparing to get yourself into the labor market as, you know, master's students, as PhD students, or, you know, those already at the early stages of their postdoctoral work. You can actually redefine your pedigree as a career-driven person. And you can do this in all kinds of ways. You can, you know, basically say, okay, I don't want to work in, you know, the field of, I don't want to work in the field of fatigue, for instance, and I want to focus on just, you know, growing nanomaterials, for instance. These things are within your power as an individual to define new directions for yourself, also new career directions, and all of this would encompass your net worth. So it's all about having a sense of yourself, you know, your integrity, your accountability, honesty, diligence, perseverance, you know, being discipline driven, your education, your curiosity, the experiences you've had, your financial standing, your intellectual property. Even as an upcoming academic, you can already identify certain things that are IP worthy. And you could either save that for yourself, or you could announce it within the entire university and say, I've come up with this, it is novel. The university helps you apply for a patent, you're listed in the patent, but you can't do much without the university. Or you can also decide and say, okay, this is an idea that I have. Probably some of the people I work do not believe in it, but I firmly believe in it. And it's something I'm going to pursue after my PhD work. If you have the resources to pursue it as an independent researcher, you pursue it, generate an IP on it. That IP might be commercialized, or that IP could be used to define your net worth. Okay. Then in terms of network, we already talked about a professional network and your social network, and all about relationships. Whether it's a professional network or a social network, it's all about relationships, and you have to grow it. You really, really have to grow it. So you can imagine the first time you ever got onto LinkedIn, for instance, there was somebody who became your first contact on LinkedIn, and that contact grew from one person, and suddenly you see yourself 500 plus person, or you see yourself at the point where LinkedIn says, I don't have capacity for your contact anymore, but you can get those people to follow you. So this is part of growing your network, and it all has to do with relationships, okay? And you can grow that network by attending events, conferences, webinars, even going to the theater, meeting people at, you know, certain social gatherings and weddings. You can grow your network by simply attending events. You can also create and respond to podcasts, posts, articles, blogs, and vlogs. All of this attracts people to your creativity. They attract people to your personality. They attract people to the responses you give. And sometimes people who respond to or react to some of your posts, they turn out being your collaborators. They turn out at some point being partners in business. They turn out being people whom you get onto new projects with. So never underestimate some of the posts that you respond to. Never underestimate some of those posts, especially if those posts are intentional, if they are targeted. Never estimate them. A lot could grow out of it, okay? And also you can learn about and connect with people in your industry, and this could be done in all kinds of ways, from some of the publications that you refer or you reference or you cite in your article writing. You might decide to meet some of the authors, not just at conferences, but also really going out of your way and saying, I'm interested in your work. I would like to discuss this with you. I'm based in Hamburg, but I can come down to Stuttgart to have a meeting with you. And that way, a network is growing. Never underestimate that investment you make, okay? And you can also, request for, a meeting, as I already said, and as you do that, you need to be prepared for it. You need to sometimes even, go to get a sense of the background of the person you'll be meeting. And you probably know that LinkedIn and all kinds of other social media tools we have can already give you a sense of the mindset, the values, and what takes certain people, and being able to get yourself ready with certain talking points can be an added value as you grow and create solid networks. And of course, you need to be able to promote your brand at every opportunity. So once you're able to identify what distinguishes you from every other person in this world, once you know what that is, don't be afraid to bring that into the foreground. Don't be afraid to embellish it, even in your resume, if you can, but not with all humility as you do that, of course. Never underestimate what being able to brand yourself could do for you as an individual. Never underestimate that. So why should growth be sustained is a critical question. Why should growth be sustained? Isn't it enough for me to say, okay, I want to get myself to the point where I become a line manager, for instance, in a company, and this is what my ambition is, to become a line manager. And then after 5 years, you become a line manager, and then what next? That's the question. What next? What comes next? Can you sustain the skills? Can you sustain the image? Can you sustain the values that had made it possible for you to become a line manager? So these are things that one needs to work on. But there is a reason why that sustaining certain skills and growing those skills are important. And one of those reasons is that it strengthens your confidence as an individual. It strengthens your confidence as an individual. It helps you build culture and legacy as you sustain certain habits, especially habits that bring value to your work environment, bring value to your profession, bring value to your personality as an individual. If you're able to sustain those, not just quantitatively sustaining them, but also qualitatively sustaining those values, this would help you significantly. It empowers and gives you a sense of ownership as well. It promotes independency, your ability to go out and learn and learn and learn, gets you to the point where at some point, certain things you ordinarily would have outsourced, you're able to do those yourself. Certain things that you probably would have sought from a mentor, you're able to handle those yourself. So the ability to sustain growth promotes independence. It creates value for the community you belong to as well, as I already mentioned, and it brings purpose to your life. It really does. You wake up, you go to bed with a purpose, and that purpose is not necessarily, oh, I want to climb Mount Everest next year, but that purpose is mainly driven by the contribution you bring to the community you serve or the community which you are a part of. Okay. We have some barriers against growth, and some of those barriers are procrastination. You need to draw a distinction also between procrastination and indecision. So procrastination means that you know what to do, but yet you decide not to do it. That is procrastination. You know exactly what to do, but yet you decide not to do it. So there is a decision process in procrastination because you've decided not to do it. So it's important that you do not procrastinate. It's as simple as procrastination is a barrier against growth. It is a barrier, really it is. And feeling comfortable in your current position, it's a barrier against growth. So once you find yourself in a comfort zone, you feel there is no need to read a book every month anymore. You feel there is no need to use a library. You feel there is no need to have a mentor anymore. You need to snap out of a comfort zone. It's important. If you get stuck in a comfort zone, then you negatively influence your growth process as an individual. And of course, indecision, the lack of support, fear, lack of trust, pride, hurt, self-centeredness, perfectionism, lack of time and funds. So all of these are barriers against growth. And I just want to say something about perfectionism. Oftentimes there are people whom, if all their stars around them are not well aligned, they would not move. But in reality, this is not what life is about. Life requires that you take, in fact, oftentimes that you take a leap of faith. That's what life requires, that oftentimes you take a leap of faith. You just make that jump, knowing in your mind that it is quite likely I'm going to land on solid ground. It could also be that I land, I find myself in a bottomless tunnel, but you never know until you actually take that leap of faith. And so getting all your stars, perfectly aligned should not be the criteria against making the next step in your career, for instance. Okay. Then how do we guarantee growth? One principal way you can guarantee growth, first of all, is to believe in yourself. Because if you do not believe in yourself, how do you expect others to believe in you? You need to be able to believe in what you're capable of doing. You need to be able to believe that if I, set my mind on this, I can achieve this. You need to be able to get yourself to that point. You need to be able to identify role models. So no matter how old you are, it's important. And no matter how mature you are in your profession, role models are important because they kind of set the standard and you try to emulate those standards, okay? And it's important to have a mentor. Mentorship is important. No matter how advanced you are in your career, it's important to have a mentor. You need to be able to plan and be specific and intentional in your actions. Very important. You need to have solid access to information. I emphasize that solid access to information. And the reason for that is because some of us already feed off a lot of information coming out of the social media. And as you probably know, a lot of that information can come out very falsified. And it's presented like facts. It looks factual, but it's not factual. So you need to be able to identify where exactly you can source reliable information or reliable data and fix onto that source. You need to be able to focus on processes. I already mentioned that, be ready and prepared most of the time. This is important. So if there is any topic that you suddenly get interested in. You need to immerse yourself in it. You need to get yourself to the point where if you're woken up in the middle of the night, you should be able to speak about it. You need to be able to read, and ask for directions. This is important. Identify with the community, and you need to show persistence. You need to show perseverance, and you need to show grit, because it's not physical power that gives you the audacity to grow. It is your ability to submit to the elements that makes growth possible that will allow you to grow. And what some of those elements are: persistence, perseverance, and grit. I want to say something about this curve here, this Dunning-Kruger curve. I'm not sure if some of you already are aware of this curve. This is a curve that was developed in 1999 by these two psychologists. The study they decided to do was actually to determine why is it that certain people who overestimate their ability to succeed come out unsuccessful. This was what they actually were working on to investigate. And when you look at this curve, it has some very interesting stages to it. You have a point where you come into your work environment, you come into a situation where performance is required with little or no knowledge, and you encounter all kinds of challenges. And I mean, when you look at this curve, it looks a lot like the Gartner Hype curve, but this curve is interesting. It's a curve that actually describes a lot about things that happens to us as human beings. At some point, you come in thinking that you know it all, and you encounter this so-called peak of Mount Stupid, as they call it. And then suddenly you discover that there's a lot of deficiencies in your know-how. And then you encounter this trough or valley of despair. And certain things could happen that would keep you stuck here. If you get discouraged, if there is nobody to support your ideals, your goals, you get stuck here almost forever. Or if there's no change in your thinking, no change in your strategy, you get stuck here. But a lot of people get the energy, either internally or from the environment, to go beyond this valley, and they find themselves ascending this slope of enlightenment. They begin to see things differently. They begin to look at situations from all angles. They begin to prepare themselves for all kinds of challenges, and at some point, they're able to sustain growth. No matter what happens, remember that the journey doesn't have to end in this valley of despair. No matter what happens in your growth or in your drive to achieve a certain aim, if you find yourself in this valley of despair, remember to get out of it. Whatever it takes to get out of it, get out of it. I'm going to end with saying a few things about my own growth. As I already mentioned, mentorship is important. So I've benefited immensely from mentors, and I encourage you to do the same. Please find a mentor. It doesn't matter where that mentor is, but this is somebody you should be able to sit down with, and with all honesty, say something about the challenges you're going through as an individual. This is important. So we all need someone to help us grow, and the mentoring and a mentor could help you do that, to help us grow and be the best versions of ourselves. And this is simply what I've done. I've identified mentors at different stages of my life, and I've sat down with those people and described what's going on in my life, especially my professional life, what's going on in my head, the challenges I face, or the things that I seek to do next in my career path. Thank you very much.